I never imagined that posting a simple "no parking" sign would spark an all-out war with the neighborhood HOA, especially with their self-important president. Who would have guessed that having a few cars towed would uncover a year-long mess of secrets, and finally bring some long-overdue justice to our business block? I hit the brakes hard, barely missing a silver Lexus parked right in my assigned spot. 3 unfamiliar cars had taken over our tiny company lot, and my frustration instantly skyrocketed. After 5 years running my web design firm in this building, this had never happened before. "What is going on?" I muttered, driving around twice before finally parking out on the street. Now I had to deal with the parking meter all day. Definitely not how I wanted to kick off my Monday. Tanya, my office manager, was already inside and clearly irritated. There's nowhere to park. Jason and Mia are still driving around trying to find a spot. I tossed my laptop bag onto my desk and looked out the window at the mystery vehicles. Any clue whose cars those are? "Not a single one," Tanya replied. I was sipping my morning coffee when I noticed a property management sign by the fence near our office lot. Curious, I walked over. The sign read, "Evergreen Property Management." So I called them. A bored-sounding receptionist picked up and transferred me to someone named Doug. "Oh, that must be Pinecrest Gardens," he said when I described the situation. "They're repaving their visitor parking this week, so the HOA told residents to use your lot temporarily." I froze. No one asked my permission. Doug didn't seem concerned. Strange. Let me check something." I heard him typing. According to our notes, Margaret Wilson, the HOA president, said she had an agreement with the business owner. "I am the business owner," I snapped. "There is no agreement." Doug mumbled something about looking into it. Clearly, I was getting nowhere, so I typed up some polite notices. Private property. Parking for XYZ design employees only. Please find alternative parking. Thank you for understanding. I placed one under each windshield. By lunchtime, my staff was complaining. They'd gotten tickets after parking on the street. I promised to reimburse them. Nearly $200 gone in one day. "Maybe we should just tow them," Jason said between bites of his sandwich. "Let's try the nice approach first," I replied, though I was already losing patience. The next morning? Worse. Not 3, but 7 cars with Pinecrest Gardens permits filled our lot. My notes were crumpled on the ground. One even had a handwritten message. "The HOA said this is okay." That did it. I drove to Pinecrest Gardens. It was a gated community of upscale townhomes, right next to our building. A security guard stopped me at the gate. I explained the situation, and he handed me Margaret Wilson's phone number. When I called, she said, "I'm in meetings all day. Can this wait?" "No," I said firmly. "Your residents are taking our private parking. We had clients cancel yesterday because they couldn't find a spot." She let out a dramatic sigh. "Fine. I can give you 10 minutes. At 3:30, I spent the rest of the day reviewing property deeds and local parking regulations. Everything clearly showed our lot belonged exclusively to us." At 3:25, I arrived at the Pinecrest Clubhouse, documents in hand. Margaret Wilson was exactly as I had imagined. Mid-50s, perfect blonde highlights, expensive clothes, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. As I stood outside with my morning coffee, something caught my eye. A property management sign posted near the fence by our office lot. Curious, I walked over and read the name, Evergreen Property Management. I decided to give them a call. A tired-sounding receptionist picked up and quickly transferred me to someone named Doug. "Oh, that's probably Pinecrest Gardens," he said casually, after I explained the situation. "They're repaving their visitor parking this week. The HOA told residents they could temporarily use your lot." I blinked. No one asked me. Doug didn't seem fazed. "That's odd. Let me check something." I could hear him typing in the background. According to our notes, Margaret Wilson, the HOA president, said she had an agreement with the business owner. I am the business owner, I said sharply, and there's no agreement. Doug vaguely promised to look into it, but I could already tell this wasn't going anywhere. So I took matters into my own hands. I printed a few polite notices that read, "Private property, parking for XYZ design employees only. Please use alternative parking." Thank you. I slipped one under each windshield. By noon, my team was complaining. Every one of them had gotten street parking tickets. I told them I'd cover the cost. Almost $200 gone in a single day. Maybe we should start towing them, Jason muttered while munching his sandwich. Let's be civil, for now, I replied. But inside I was seething. The next day it got worse. 7 cars with Pinecrest Gardens permits had filled up our entire lot. My signs tossed on the ground. One even had a note scrawled on it. The HOA said this is okay. That was the last straw. I drove straight to Pinecrest Gardens, an upscale, gated townhome community just next to our office. A security guard stopped me at the entrance. I explained the issue, and he gave me Margaret Wilson's phone number. I called her right away. I'm in meetings all day, she said coolly. Can this wait? No, I replied. Your residents are taking parking spaces my business needs. We lost clients yesterday because they couldn't find a spot. She sighed, clearly annoyed. Fine, I'll give you 10 minutes at 3:30. The rest of my day was spent digging through property records and zoning laws. Our deed clearly showed the lot belonged solely to our building. At 3:25, I walked into the Pinecrest clubhouse, documents in hand. Margaret Wilson looked exactly how I pictured her. Mid-50s, salon-perfect blonde hair, high-end outfit, and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It started like any other morning. I was outside with a cup of coffee when I noticed a new sign posted near the fence by our office parking lot. Curious, I walked over to get a better look. Evergreen Property Management, it read. That raised a red flag. I called the number listed, and a weary-sounding receptionist picked up. She quickly transferred me to someone named Doug. Oh, that's probably Pinecrest Gardens, he said nonchalantly after I explained what was happening. They're resurfacing their visitor lot this week, so the HOA told residents to park in your lot temporarily. I paused, confused. No one informed me. And this is private property. Doug didn't seem bothered. Let me check something. I heard him typing for a few seconds. According to our records, Margaret Wilson, the HOA president, mentioned having an agreement with the business owner. Well, I am the business owner, I said firmly, and there is no such agreement. Doug muttered something about looking into it and ended the call. Frustrated, I decided to take a proactive approach. I printed a few firm but polite notices. Private property. Parking reserved for XYZ design employees only. Please park elsewhere. Thank you. I placed one under each windshield in our lot. But by midday, my team started complaining. Every one of them had received a street parking ticket. I promised to reimburse them. Nearly $200 lost in just a few hours. We should just tow them, Jason grumbled while finishing his lunch. Let's give them a chance to do the right thing first, I said. But honestly, my patience was fading. The next day, worse. 7 vehicles with Pinecrest Gardens permits had taken over our lot. My notes? Tossed on the ground like trash. One even had a smug message scribbled on it. The HOA said this is okay. That was it. I drove to Pinecrest Gardens. It was a gated community of upscale townhomes right next to our building. The security guard wouldn't let me in without an appointment, but after I explained the issue, he gave me Margaret Wilson's contact number. I called her immediately. I'm in meetings all day, she said coldly. Can it wait? It can't, I replied. Your residents are taking up parking that our clients and employees need. We lost business yesterday because of this. She sighed, clearly irritated. Fine. I'll give you 10 minutes at 3:30. The rest of my day was spent digging into city records and our deed documents. Everything clearly stated the lot was exclusively ours. At 3:25, I arrived at the Pinecrest Clubhouse, armed with paperwork and determination. Margaret Wilson was exactly what I expected. Mid-50s, salon-styled blonde hair, a designer outfit, and a smile that said, "I don't think you'll win this." "Find street parking. We had an agreement, Margaret. 5 spots. 1 week," I said, trying to stay calm. "I communicated exactly what we discussed," she replied smoothly. "Perhaps some residents misunderstood." 15 cars, Margaret. "That's not a misunderstanding. That's complete disregard for our agreement." "I'm hosting the garden committee right now," she said, voices murmuring in the background. "Can we talk about this later?" "No," I said firmly. "I need those cars moved immediately," she sighed. "You're overreacting. It's just parking." "It's not just parking, it's my property, and it's affecting my business." Then her tone shifted. "Well, technically, there's nothing you can do. As I mentioned, the previous owner gave us occasional parking rights years ago." I felt the heat rising in my face. "Show me this supposed agreement." "I'll have our secretary scan it tomorrow," she said. "In the meantime, please try to be neighborly." She hung up. I stood there, seething, when Tanya walked over, holding a stack of papers. 4 appointments cancelled. Clients couldn't find parking and left, she said. 2 more rescheduled for next week. That was the last straw. "Call everyone. We're working remotely today." That evening, I went down to the county records office. A clerk helped me search every file tied to our building. After an hour of digging, we found nothing. No parking easement, no agreement, nothing linking us to Pinecrest Gardens. Next, I tracked down the previous owner, Mr. Sanderson, who'd retired to Florida. I explained what was happening. He laughed. "She tried that with me too," he said. "They wanted overflow parking rights for their community events. I refused. There was never any agreement." "She claims there's a document," I told him. "She's bluffing," he replied. "I owned that place for 22 years. Never signed a thing." Armed with the truth, I contacted 3 towing companies. Only one was willing to handle a situation involving an HOA. They explained the legal steps. Proper signage had to be installed and visible for 24 hours before towing could start. No problem. I ordered signs that night. Private property. Unauthorized vehicles will be towed at owner's expense. The towing company had them installed at every entrance by midnight. Then I wrote Margaret an email. "I have confirmed with both county records and the previous owner that there is no parking agreement between my property and Pinecrest Gardens. Starting Wednesday morning, unauthorized vehicles will be towed. Please notify your residents immediately." 20 minutes later, my phone rang. "You're making a serious mistake," Margaret said, her polite tone now icy. "We have legal standing." "Then produce the document," I replied calmly. "I don't appreciate your hostile approach to what should have been a simple, neighborly discussion," she snapped. I didn't respond. She continued, "Our residents will be very upset." "They should be," I said, and hung up. "Street parking is available. We agreed on 5 spots, Margaret. For 1 week," I said, working hard to stay composed. "I relayed exactly what we discussed," she said, voice syrupy. "Maybe a few residents misunderstood." 15 cars is not a misunderstanding. That's a complete disregard for what we agreed on. "I'm in the middle of the garden committee meeting," she replied, background chatter filtering through. "Can we continue this later?" "Number Y need those vehicles moved now." She let out a long sigh. "You're overreacting. It's just parking." "It's not just parking, it's private property, and my business is being disrupted." Then her tone shifted. "Well, technically, there's not much you can do. The previous owner granted us limited parking rights years ago." My blood pressure surged. "Show me this agreement. I'll have our secretary dig it up and scan it tomorrow," she said. "In the meantime, please, let's be good neighbors." Click. She ended the call. I stood there fuming when Tanya approached, holding a small stack of printed pages. 4 clients cancelled today. No parking. 2 more rescheduled for next week, she said quietly. That was it. Call the team. We're going remote today. That evening, I headed to the county records office. A patient clerk helped me comb through every file related to our property. We turned over every stone. No easements, no permits, no written agreements. Nothing. Still not convinced, I tracked down Mr. Sanderson, the previous owner, now retired in Florida. When I told him the story, he burst out laughing. "Margaret tried that same stunt on me," he said. "Wanted permanent overflow parking for HOA events. I said no, there's no agreement, because I never signed one. She says she has a document. She's bluffing," he said. "I owned that place for over 2 decades. She's fishing." Now confident, I called 3 towing companies. Only one was willing to step into a situation involving an HOA. They laid out the process. Signage had to be posted for 24 hours before any enforcement. I didn't hesitate. I had signs ordered and installed that very night. Private property, unauthorized vehicles will be towed at owner's expense. The towing company mounted them at each entrance, bright and clear by morning. Then I sent Margaret one final email. I verified with the county and the previous owner. There is no agreement between my business and Pinecrest Gardens. Unauthorized vehicles will be towed beginning Wednesday morning. Please inform your residents immediately. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. "You're making a serious mistake," Margaret snapped. The fake warmth was gone. "If you have legal standing, show me the document," I said. "I don't appreciate this aggressive attitude. This was supposed to be a neighborly arrangement." I stayed silent. "Our residents will not take this lightly," I answered flatly. "Then they will be upset." And I ended the call. I sat silently across from Margaret, not even glancing at the folder in front of me. "I also have recordings of our calls," I said calmly, "where you hinted that your role on the planning commission could make things difficult for my business." It was a bluff. I hadn't recorded anything, but her reaction would speak volumes. Her face drained of color. That's not what I meant." "It's exactly what you meant," I replied, "and it's wildly unethical." The energy in the room shifted. Her smug confidence began to peel away as she slowly sank into the chair, voice quieter now. "What do you want?" "I want you to tell your residents the truth, that you misled them. I want a formal statement from the HOA board confirming there is no parking agreement, and I want the harassment of my business to stop permanently." Margaret narrowed her eyes, calculating. Outside, through the office window, I spotted another Pinecrest resident. They pulled into the lot, saw the new signage, and sped off in frustration. She finally broke the silence. "The board meets tonight. I'll bring it up." As she stood to leave, I gave her one last warning. "Oh, and Margaret, if I see even one more resident parking here without permission, I'll be contacting the ethics committee about your threats." She didn't reply. She just walked out, noticeably less sure of herself than when she'd strutted in. I didn't know if this was the end, or just a pause before something worse. Either way, I wasn't backing down. Some battles are worth fighting, even when they start with something as small as a parking space. Later that day, I decided to speak with her face to face, and I walked right into her garden committee meeting. The perfectly trimmed lawn, the matching sun hats, the trays of lemon bars, and 6 women staring at me like I was a stray animal on their patio. "Margaret, we need to talk," I said, my voice trembling slightly. I hadn't planned for an audience, but maybe that was a good thing. Margaret turned, smile tight, and eyes sharp. "Ladies, this is our neighbor who runs that little computer shop next door." "Software development," but I didn't bother correcting her. What seems to be the issue now? She asked, voice dripping with faux concern. There are 15 Pinecrest vehicles in our lot, I said, pulling out my phone. We agreed on 5 spots. 1 week. That agreement was broken. Today, my entire team had to park 3 blocks away. A woman with short grey hair leaned forward. Margaret, I thought you said he was happy to help. Margaret waved dismissively. He's overreacting. It's just parking. We're in the middle of a community improvement project. You violated our deal, I snapped, feeling heat rise in my chest. My business is suffering. Clients are leaving. My employees are walking back from lunch late because they're parking in the next zip code. Margaret's smile flattened as she glanced sideways at her friends. Then she leaned in and said quietly, Technically, there's nothing you can do. The previous owner granted us occasional parking rights. It's in our HOA records. I froze. The woman with grey hair nodded. Yes, I remember that. Back when Dr. Johnson owned the building. My stomach dropped. Could that be true? Had I unknowingly bought a property with a hidden easement? No, I said, standing my ground. My lawyer would have caught that during the sale. If there was any easement, I'd have known. I want to see this so-called agreement. Margaret's smile grew wider, but it didn't reach her eyes. Of course, she said, syrupy sweet. I'll have our secretary email it to you. Now, ladies, shall we continue? The flower competition won't judge itself. I left feeling hollow, confused, angry. Back in my car, I called my real estate attorney. She assured me she'd dig through every line of documentation from the sale and get back to me as soon as possible. That evening, long after the office had emptied, I sat alone at my desk. The only sound was the hum of the AC and the ping of an incoming email. It was from my lawyer. There was a document, but not what Margaret claimed. 15 years ago, the HOA had submitted a proposal requesting occasional use of the parking lot during their annual community events. Dr. Johnson, the previous owner, had rejected it in writing. There was no agreement, not verbal, not implied, and certainly not binding. My hands were shaking as I reached for the phone. I called a towing company the strip mall owner across the street had once recommended, a no-nonsense place called Blue Sky Towing. Blue Sky Towing, how can we help? A woman answered. I need unauthorized vehicles removed from my business lot, I said, forcing calm into my voice. How soon can you get signage installed? We can have everything up by tomorrow afternoon, she said, but you'll need to keep the signs visible for at least 24 hours before we tow. Legal requirement. That's fine. And how early can you start towing after that? We've got drivers available first thing Thursday morning. Perfect. Do it. Wednesday morning, I arrived at dawn. The towing company was already there, bolting large red and white signs at each entrance. Private property. Unauthorized vehicles will be towed at owner's expense. They also added their official signs with their company name, logo, and phone number, all required by city ordinance. Subject: Private meeting request. I'd like to discuss this situation with you in person. There are other concerns about Margaret's leadership. We met that afternoon at a quiet coffee shop. Robert got right to the point. I owe you an apology. Margaret never brought your parking lot issue to the board. What she did was completely unauthorized. I let him speak. This isn't the first time. She's made decisions on her own for years. Hired her brother's landscaping company without approval. Threatened local business owners who didn't donate to her charity. Why is she still president? I asked. He sighed. She's good at manipulating people, and frankly, people are afraid of her. She's made life hard for anyone who speaks up. Like threatening to abuse her role on the planning commission? I asked. Robert looked up sharply. Did she say that to you? I played the recording. His expression grew darker by the second. Would you be willing to send this to me? He asked. And maybe attend our emergency board meeting tomorrow. That evening, I stood in the HOA Community Center, facing a full room, 7 board members, and over 50 residents. Margaret sat in front, arms crossed, eyes burning holes through me. Robert called the meeting to order. For the record, this emergency session was called to address serious concerns about the conduct of our board president. For the next hour, years of Margaret's misdeeds spilled out. Unauthorized contracts, intimidation, manipulation, and finally, the recording. When it played, you could hear the room gasp. Margaret tried to defend herself. "He's twisting my words. I was only trying to protect our community's interests," but the damage was done. By the end of the meeting, the board had voted to remove Margaret as HOA president and to initiate a formal ethics investigation with the City Planning Commission. As I left the building, several residents stopped me, some to apologize, some just to say thank you. One elderly woman took my hand in both of hers. "Thank you for standing up to her," she whispered. "Some of us have been too afraid to for years." The following Monday, my parking lot was blissfully quiet. No angry calls, no cars blocking the spaces, just employees, just peace. That day, I received an official letter from the new HOA president, Robert, apologizing again and confirming that alternate parking had been arranged for residents. But that wasn't all. 3 nearby business owners reached out. They'd been dealing with similar harassment. Margaret had told them they couldn't put up signs, dictated their hours, using non-existent rules. Together, we formed a small business association, a united front, a support system. 2 weeks later, a small article appeared in the local paper. Planning Commission member resigns amid ethics investigation. Margaret Lewis, former HOA president, steps down following allegations of misconduct. I didn't feel triumphant, just relieved. It was finally over. As I walked through the parking lot that afternoon, I realized something important. Sometimes, standing your ground isn't just about protecting your space. Sometimes it creates ripples that help others find their courage too. At the next HOA meeting, I was invited as a guest of honor. Robert stood up and handed me a formal, signed agreement. It clearly defined the boundaries between our properties and outlined a fair protocol for any future requests. "We hope this marks the beginning of a better relationship," he said. I smiled and shook his hand. "I'd like that very much.